Well, hello, good morning or good afternoon. I'm so excited to be here with you for this Client 911 PowerJam. I'm Andrea Nakayama. If you don't know me, I'm a functional nutritionist and I am owner and founder of Replenish PDX and Holistic Nutrition Lab. So what I realized over the years was that the successes I was having were a result of a number of factors. First of all, yes, I had some good information. I knew some good techniques and I understood some baseline principles. For me, those baseline principles had less to do with tactics of treatment and more about understanding physiology and what's going on in there, because that enabled me to think on my feet and not try to problem solve before I saw what all the problems could be. So that was the information that I really needed. But as I began to grow, and especially as I began to teach in Holistic Nutrition Lab, I realized that there were other elements that made me successful and that were contributing to my success. So information, understanding physiology, key, baseline. After that, I really needed to understand what some protocols and some systems were for addressing specific issues, but also thinking into them. So the physiology gave me the baseline. Systems like I teach in Reframe Nutrition and like I share in the Done For You protocols in the Digestive Intensive, those gave me next possible steps. But what ultimately I think is a huge part of the success that I've had in practice, and that's enabled me to grow Replenish so that I have a number of nutritionists on the team and we have a wait list that we can't keep up with months out, is that I offer hope to people who don't have so much hope anymore. So understanding the physiology, key, helps me think on my feet. Understanding systems to think into a problem, also next step. But being able to offer transformation to people is critical. So this is where I want to invite you as a practitioner to invite transformation into your own life so that you can help your clients and patients transform. And that's really, really key. By doing that, that's how we transcend the current state of health and medicine. So like I said, this is a Client 911 PowerJam, meaning we're going for 4 hours reviewing client cases. And these cases have been submitted by select digestive intensive graduates. So let me just talk a little bit about what that means. So the digestive intensive is the first module in the clinician training Holistic Nutrition Lab, and it is the only module that's offered on its own. After the digestive intensive, there's the possibility to go on or not to the 9-month program. A good number do, and many have to put it off till the next year. But I offered this digestive intensive as a standalone module, particularly because all health starts in the gut. And you know that, I know that, but what does it mean to address any health issue by starting at the gut, even when your clients and patients are coming to you telling you that they don't have digestive issues? I have an autoimmune condition myself, Hashimoto's, and I don't experience digestive distress. So that's what the Digestive Intensive is all about. And the Digestive Intensive is only open for enrollment 2 times a year. And one of those times is right now. So I want to invite you to go learn more about the Digestive Intensive now or later, www.digestiveintensive.com, and you can go learn more about all that's included and all the benefits you'll receive within the Digestive Intensive. What I wanted to share with you is this is what we do on our team. We have a 90-minute CRM meeting every single week. And that's a client review meeting where the nutritionists on my team bring their cases to me in a fashion that you're seeing us do today, and I review them. So I'm reading these case study forms that were submitted, and the first one is from Laurie. Thank you, Laurie. Patient's name unknown. Patient is female, age 64, and the presenting complaint is peptic ulcers. So stomach issues for the past 5 to 6 years, has had 5 scopes top to bottom, all normal. So additional presenting complaints. This patient, 64, with peptic ulcers, has Hashimoto's and thyroid nodules, but not currently treated with Synthroid. Minor urinary frequency, burning or urgency, mild insomnia, mild aches and weakness, cold hands and feet, chronic constipation, moderate bloating and gas, moderate fatigue throughout day, irritable and uncomfortable when hungry, melanoma 3 times, severe vaginal dryness, and some lab results. So we have some hormones. Vitamin D is 149, TSH is 4.39. Interesting. So that's interesting. She's presenting with her free T3 is 3.1, her T4 total is 6.4, glucose is 77, cholesterol 195, triglycerides 95, LDL 111, white blood count, red blood count, neutrophils, lymphocytes. Okay, current protocol. She's been avoiding most gluten for a few months. She feels better off gluten, and recent doc visit confirmed to her that it's good to be off gluten. I suggested she try to work harder on avoiding gluten, especially in hidden sources. Have provided her information on where to find the hidden sources. Off tomatoes, citrus, and most white foods to help with ulcer. I recommended she try eliminating dairy to see if that helps with reflux. She craves chocolate. I just sent her some info you sent yesterday about carob. Thank you. And prior to her health concerns, most days she didn't eat breakfast or lunch. She recently started making fermented whole body shakes in the morning. This has seemed to help. Is fermented powder okay with candida issues? Regularly consumes sugar, dairy, a glass of milk with dinner, uses butter, a cup of coffee in the morning. No particular diet plan other than gluten-free, type A personality, high-stress job, currently not exercising much. She takes calcium, magnesium, 10 drops Lugol's, so she's taking iodine, vitamin D, 5 drops, and Dr. Ohira's probiotics. She's on DHEA, Probonics drops. Okay, so main questions. Is that good? Everybody have a good perspective of the case? Main questions for discussion. I know low stomach acid is not good and may exacerbate ulcers, but if a client already has an ulcer, do you try to increase the stomach acid, or does that cause more injury? So let's start there for a moment. So this client has a lot going on. It does sound like there's some deep autoimmune issues, and I'd really want to understand what the signs and symptoms of the ulcer are. So it sounds like she's experiencing a lot of signs and symptoms. Her life can't really be feeling that full with all those signs and symptoms, that fatigue, the aching joints, the urinary frequency. So really what I would want to do is back it way up in terms of her motivating factors, the factors that are keeping her from going 100% with the diet. We have to think about where the food meets the physiology and help the client or patient to really understand those connections. And we don't help them understand it in terms of their biochemistry or in terms of an evidence-based study. We help them understand it in terms of their life and where they feel held back. So with a client like this, I would really want to get to know her and understand where when did she feel best in her life, and what would it be like to feel like that again? Are there things that she really wants in her life that she's feeling held back from? And once you understand that, you've really seen her, and you can reflect any change you're requesting back to those issues. So she really does need to clean the muddy waters. And that may be a slower process than you think it is to get her off of the substances that are contributing to the ulcers and likely contributing to a number of other issues. So even with the labs, it's hard to fully assess them until we've cleaned and cleared those muddy waters. So we need to remove the most inflammatory foods. That's first and foremost. So getting to gluten 100%. And it's great, Louise, that you gave her a handout, but we may want to consider what does she need to make those connections, and how is that going? Sorry, I said Louise because there is a Louise. Laurie, I'm so sorry. So Laurie, we may want to look at for her, what does it mean to go 100%, and what are the things that she's still consuming that contain gluten? And then take it onward to look at dairy, and sugar is a really important one. The chocolate could be a contributing factor, and the coffee. So those are really contributing. So before we brought in any more to address the ulcer, I'd want to clear the muddy waters, and that would include removing the inflammatory foods. And there's a number of ways to do that. We could do that slowly but surely so that she's making the connections and she can really feel the difference one by one. Or it may be that you ask her to do an elimination protocol with you for a 3-week time period where you actually remove everything that might be in the inflammatory category, and you hold her through that. You really support her through that. But before we do that, it's very hard to see what signs and symptoms still persist. After that, we may be looking at what foods are inflammatory for her, individual, but we need to clear so that we can see what still exists. And this is part of backing it up and not addressing ulcer, but addressing the client herself. And she says, Laurie says, do you suggest working on healing the gut and candida simultaneously, or focus on one or the other first? And this, I'm glad you asked that, because in order to sometimes work with upper digestive issues, we need to make sure we have addressed the gut and we're working with those lower digestive issues. So candida and leaky gut or gut dysbiosis, you can work on those at the same time, depending on how extreme the candida is and what you've done to diagnose that. Was there an organic acids test? Was there some stool diagnosis that showed the candida overgrowth? So you want to be working with that overall. And the number one thing to work with that is removing the refined sugar from the diet. So that's a really good place to think about backing it up and working on those techniques to get the inflammatory foods out. You can see how a number of symptoms are the result of some of the same insults or instigators. So working on starting with the gut while eliminating the instigators is a perfect place. And you asked about ferments. I'm fine with most ferments for candida. I know there's some discrepancy. I find them to be really beneficial. And you want to work with probiotics as well as antifungals. Particularly, I would be working in some Saccharomyces boulardii. If you go to our store, replenishme.com, that's the yeast biotic, and that's a probiotic that's actually a yeast culture, a positive, beneficial yeast culture that is good to bring in when working with candida. So that was that question. And then Laurie says, I'm afraid to start out with too much information for a client. I already gave her quite a bit of information prior to working with her as a practice client. How do you determine the flow of information provided to each client? Is that a sense you develop after working with a few people? Awesome question. This really does come down to the art of the practice. So oftentimes I find that as clinicians, we, instead of meeting the client where they are, we are really aiming to show that we know a lot or give all the information. So a good way to do that is to maybe say, I'm going to show you the pictures that I see that need to be addressed just as an overview. And this is where you can pull out your anatomy and physiology book and show the whole digestive system and how it relates to other systems like I teach you to do in the Digestive Intensive, or you can just be giving a grand scope overview. And then you can say, now let's break this down, because we need to go through a process where you can make incremental change that you can stick with so that it becomes part of your lifestyle practices as opposed to a diet or a protocol. And that's where you need to make sure that you're meeting the client where they are, you're building a bridge, and you're getting agreement on what's possible. So that's where you might bring up, there's two different ways we can do this. We can do a 3-week protocol where we just dive in, or we can do this slowly but surely. What do you think is going to work for you that you're actually going to be able to stick with? And you get their agreement in that situation. So we don't want to go too much too fast. I like to introduce supplements slowly, not overload somebody with something at the start. And many successful practitioners would disagree with that because that's how they make their income, by selling loads of supplements at once. But I really want to find what works for the individual and how to stair-step that forward so they begin to feel incremental change, getting better all the time, and have the ability to take the next step. So meet them where they are, get out of your own way, and find agreement there in what it means to work together. And the final question from Laurie, and then I'm going to open it up and want to take your questions. Laurie says, I'm assuming there is not a set template for handing to each client because everyone is unique. You got it, Laurie. What's the best way to determine how to proceed, especially if there are multiple issues, which I suspect happens with most clients? Absolutely. I'm assuming I always want to back it up and start with the gut. Is diet usually the best place to start? Awesome questions, and you nailed it on the head, Laurie. So we definitely want to back it up, look at gut function, and one way to do that is by clearing the muddy waters and cleaning up the diet, and then building on the supplements from there. There's some things you can do simultaneously, like bringing in some probiotics along with the issues. I'll tell you, my signature system for most health issues would be probiotics, and I think there are going to be some questions where we have to look at how to do that slowly because of reactivity from what I peaked at quickly. So probiotics, B vitamins are critical. Again, at Replenish Me, you can find our B Supreme. That's a methylated B complex. That's really critical. Fish oil, which you can also find at Replenish Me, and that's all critical to helping to build. I do want to note that this person had a high vitamin D level, so I would look at the form of vitamin D that was measured to take that a next step. We want to look at the 25-dehydroxy vitamin D and also look at calcium levels and magnesium levels, and if all those look fine and the vitamin D looks chronically high, meaning it's always the trend has been to be high, then I would take down the dosage for sure. She's taking 5 drops of, it didn't say how much, but we don't want that over 100. And also, if it continues to be high, looking at parathyroid function. But that just becomes part of our overall scope. At the same time that we're doing that overall looking, we are working with the gut and with the person, clearing the muddy waters and taking it from there. And before I just take Caroline those questions, I do want to say that oftentimes when my nutritionists on my team bring me a case where the person is still eating an inflammatory diet, I just hand it right back to them. You know what to do from here, and then let's bring it back and see if there's more digging to do. Now, I realize that's easier said than done, because our gift in the world of functional medicine is that we work with the individual to help them make those changes in a sustainable way, even when they know what to do. So a lot of people know what to do or know they have to do it and they don't know how. And the way we get there is by really meeting the person where they are, understanding them, understanding where the blocks are, and it's less about helping them be accountable than helping them understand the connection between what they're feeling and experiencing that they don't like in their lives and what they're consuming, so that they can make that association and take ownership of that change themselves.